Good evening and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Dan Atkinson. Hurricane George continues to gain strength tonight as it heads for the U.S. coastline. Rain bands associated with George are spreading across portions of South Florida and the Keys. Squalls will be increasing in intensity throughout the overnight hours. For a complete and current update on Hurricane George, we turn now to Jeff Morrow in the Forecast Center.
All right, thanks, Dan. We have a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane right now, Category 1 still, but verging on a Category 2, moving its way off the north coast of Cuba and headed, looks like, up toward the central and southern parts of the Keys. At least that's where the center, or the eye, will probably pass closest to. But all areas in South Florida need to watch this hurricane very closely, as many areas, even not in the Keys, will get hit by some fairly bad, squally weather. All right, let's go ahead first of all and show you the satellite perspective. And again, pretty easy to pick out where our center is, right in there where I'm drawing that circle. Of course, this is Cuba right here, and of course the Florida Peninsula right here, Key West being about right in here. The general movement of this hurricane is off to the west-northwest. In fact, we have the latest from the Hurricane Center. This is as of 12 a.m. Did we get a new intermediate advisory? I'll have to double check on that. I thought the latest was 11, but it's possible we got a new one in. 23.4 north, 79.8 west, or about 145 miles southeast of Key West, Florida. Winds at 90, west-northwest at 14, and the pressure at 985 millibars. Again, there's a quick look at the hurricane. Let's show you where the watches and the warnings are out currently. We have tropical storm warnings out from Bayport on the west coast all the way down to Longboat Key. That does include the Tampa area. And then from Longboat Key all the way down along the southwest coast of Florida, including the Keys themselves, and right up the east coast to Deerfield Beach. Those are all hurricane warnings. That again is false. That should say warning. And then again from just north of Deerfield Beach all the way up to Stewart, again, tropical storm warnings in effect. The area which right now appears to be maybe one of the most in jeopardy is Key West, Florida, and that is where Don Dornberg joins us right now, and he is stationed out there at Key West. He's with the Metro News Network. And Don, how have conditions deteriorated, or have they, as we've headed on through the overnight hours?
They have significantly deteriorated in the last few hours, with the winds picking up, I would estimate now about 30, 40 miles an hour, and some light rain beginning as the first squall bands approach. Quite a significant change from mid-afternoon when it was just a beautiful late summer, balmy day with people, the stragglers that were here, sunning themselves on the beach and so forth. This town, as all the Keys, are under a mandatory evacuation order, although not everyone has heeded that. I would guess there might be 5 or 10% of the people who have stayed behind and decided to tough this out.
So you think that the vast majority of the people, both the tourists and the local residents, actually did evacuate?
Yeah, and they're feeling pretty good about it, and they kind of credit, if there was one good thing that came out of Andrew, it might have been this. Andrew, of course, missed this immediate area here, but they saw enough of the devastation that Andrew wrought that they said, well, maybe we better heed these evacuation orders and move out. And so the authorities that issued the evacuation feel good about that.
Okay, and roughly right now, what would you estimate the winds to be around the Key West area right at the present time?
About 40 miles an hour, I would guess, and very, just a real stiff wind, and not something you'd feel comfortable walking about, although it's not at the horrendous stage yet.
All right, well, Dawn, it looks like things are going to get a lot worse before they get a lot better there out on Key West, and hopefully we'll be able to check back in with you as we head on through the overnight hours as conditions deteriorate. That was Don Dornberg with the Metro News Network. And joining me now here in the Forecast Center is Senior Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. And Stu, again, our hurricane continuing to intensify. Haven't had an update yet from the NOAA aircraft, which is out there, but on our radar and satellite imagery, it does appear we're still getting some intensification.
Yes, if we're able to get a report of what the pressure is in the middle of the hurricane, that'll give us a little better indication of exactly how much it might be strengthening. But we have other tools such as radar and satellite, and they have certainly shown the intensification process this evening.
In fact, we have the satellite here, the enhanced or the colorized version. Again, here is South Florida and Key West, where Dawn was just reporting from, about right in there. And the eye just off the north coast, but boy, once that eye got off the coast, Stu, as we expected, that's when things started to go to town once again.
It did. The environment and the atmosphere is very favorable for intensification. The oceanic environment is favorable too. In other words, it's over very warm water in the middle and upper 80s, and the only thing holding it back was the land, and it doesn't have that impediment anymore.
All right, and here is a Doppler radar which clearly shows where our eye is. Again, here is Key West, and conditions where Dawn Dorenberg are will be considerably deteriorating as we head through the next 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, compared to what he was reporting and what we've seen on a couple pieces of video this evening from the Keys, that really does not compare to what's going on a little closer to the center of the hurricane.
And quickly, Stu, I know that, as Dawn was saying, there are some people that lingered or decided to ride out the storm out there, and there are some areas that they can go to if need be in an absolute emergency. It's kind of a last resort place to kind of go, and I think we can put those up. These are places that, do we have that graphic that we can go to? There it is. Again, these are the last refuges.
And they include Plantation Key, the Coral Shores High School, Glen Archer Elementary School, Marathon Key, and Key West, Stanley Switlick Elementary School. And folks who are not experiencing anything too bad right now should still consider going to these as things might get quite a bit worse.
All right, Stu Ostro, Meteorology Supervisor, will be back again with us, and I'll be back with you in about a half an hour with the very latest. Tune us back in, please, to keep updated. But if you can't, when you're away from your television, you can always go to online at weather.com to get the very latest. Dan now has a look at the rest of the nation's weather and your forecast.
And thanks a lot, Jeff. Across the rest of the country, things are pretty tranquil in most cases. Some areas getting some light rain. That's the case in the Pacific Northwest, where Seattle and Portland have had a little bit of light rain. You've had some thunder rumbling around Kansas City, light rain falling on Pittsburgh, and some echoes of precipitation across the Northeast, but not much of that reaching the ground. This low pressure area in the country's midsection will likely be the focal point for some heavy weather over the next 12 to 24 hours. There could be some strong to severe storms over portions of northern Oklahoma, southern portions of Kansas. One of the ingredients for the strong to severe thunderstorms, high heat. You hit a record high today in Amarillo, Texas of 98. Tied a record at Galveston when you hit 90 this afternoon. High temperatures across the country's midsection were as much as 10 to 15 degrees above normal for this time of year. Temperatures about normal. The highs were up and down the Atlantic seaboard, but you did have a chilly start to the day. Some of the normally colder spots in the Northeast dropped to the 20s this morning. And you'll be probably 5 to 10 degrees warmer tomorrow morning than you were this morning. Still nippy, but not quite as cold. Right now in New York City, you're 63. Mid-50s in Boston, 82 degrees now in Miami. Chicago, you're 62, right at 60 in Denver, and 65.
Good morning and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Sharon Resulton. Hurricane George continues to gain strength tonight as it heads for the U.S. coastline. Rain bands associated with George are spreading across portions of South Florida and the Keys. Squalls will be increasing in intensity throughout the overnight hours. For a complete and current update on Hurricane George, we turn now to Jeff Morrow in the Forecast Center.
That's right, Sharon, and we just got a new advisory in from the Hurricane Center. They are going to be issued every 2 hours now. We got one here at 1, and we'll get another one at 3, and then a complete advisory at 5 o'clock. So we'll be able to keep you updated exactly on where this hurricane is and what the relative strength of the pressure and the winds are as we head on through the overnight hours. Let's go ahead, first of all, and show it to you on the satellite perspective. And again, still a very well-defined eye circulation and a very well-defined outflow. As you can see, these bands of high clouds spinning outwards from the hurricane, indicating there is a large area of high pressure aloft, and that is very conducive for development. Really, the only thing that has been holding this hurricane back from developing has been its proximity to land and the center being over land much of the last couple of days. Now, this was the 12 a.m. update. Now, I'm going to give you the latest coordinates, which are 23.4 north and 80 west, or about 135 miles southeast of Key West, Florida. Its movement is west-northwest at 14. The pressure still, well, 985 millibars now, and the wind still at 90 miles an hour. So a little bit of a change there, perhaps a little bit more of a jog off toward the west. Let's show you where the hurricane watches and warnings are at the present time. Again, the warnings from Longboat Key on the west coast all the way down, including Fort Myers, right around the Everglades, out through the Keys, and all the way up the east coast to Deerfield Beach. That does include Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Then from north of Deerfield to Stewart, we have tropical storm warnings, and then from north of Longboat all the way up to Bayport on the west coast of Florida, there are tropical storm warnings as well. Now, one of the areas that may be impacted potentially severely here would be Collier County in the southwest corner of the state, and that is where Gary Arnold joins us now on the phone. He is with the Collier County Emergency Management. And Mr. Arnold, how are things faring so far in Collier County?
Well, Jeff, things are moving along very nicely. The streets have kind of cleared out. We have about 1,200 people or so in the shelters, with a capacity in the open shelters of about 8,500. So we've got plenty of room for those who still need to go to shelters, but it looks like people are pretty well getting to where they need to be. We've asked them to try to reach their final destination before 3 o'clock this morning, just in case this storm should pick up a little speed and get here a little earlier than we'd thought. But things have generally gone very well today.
And you found that most people have heeded any evacuation orders?
We have. About 42,000 people are located in the area that we asked to evacuate south of US 41 in the county and 5th Avenue South in the city. We're told that about 90% of the condos are empty on Marco Island, about 60% of the private homes. There are still some people out there who may be at risk, but especially now seeing the position the last couple of hours becoming a little bit more westerly, whether that's just a little jog in the position or a little trend, is a little too early to tell, but the further west it goes, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, we're still expecting some fairly squally weather there, obviously, though, as we head through the day on Friday, and I guess the county is still bracing for that as well.
We've pretty well told everybody to expect to spend Friday more or less in a hunker-down mode. Just stay inside. We'll let them know when things are starting to clear up, but Friday is going to be pretty much a watch the storm go by kind of day. We are a little concerned about the area around Everglades City, where we're expecting a rather high tide about 4:45 this morning, about a 3.4-foot tide above normal, with about a 3 to 5 foot surge on top of that. So we may see some flooding down in the Everglades City area later, maybe some in Marco Island. But all in all, if the storm stays to the west as it appears it will, we should be in good shape as long as there's no surprises to the east.
All right, and we hope for the best there in Collier County, indeed for all of South Florida. Thank you, Gary Arnold, for the Collier County Emergency Management, for joining us. I know you've been very busy this evening. And joining me now here in the Forecast Center is Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. And again, Stu, latest advisory, maybe jogging it a little bit west, but we expect those kinds of wobbles as the hurricane continues its journey.
The momentum of the hurricane's winds tend to cause it to do these little wobbles back and forth. It has, as Mr. Arnold said, wobbled a little bit to the west, more west than north over the last couple hours. We'll just have to watch that very closely overnight, see whether it continues. In general, we expect somewhere between northwest and west-northwest.
All right, that was the satellite vantage point. Let's go right to the radar here, Stu. And again, Collier County, of course, being up in this vicinity here. The Keys right now, particularly the lower Keys down toward Key West, appear to be most in jeopardy, at least from an eye landfall at this point.
Yeah, again, we'll be watching those wobbles very closely, but smoothing the wobbles out, we expect it to be somewhere in this cone here, so it looks like the eye will come very close to the lower Keys at the very least.
And what kind of weather can they expect as that eye goes by, probably in the next 6 to 8 hours or so?
As these outer squalls come in, the wind in each one will perhaps get a little bit stronger, it'll die off, and then there'll be a rapid increase in wind as the eye wall around the eye comes in, and that'll be a little bit later on toward daybreak and into the morning hours.
One thing I guess we can be thankful for here is we haven't seen any explosive deepening here maybe in the last couple of hours, which has been fairly good news. It's been more or less steady state, but that doesn't mean it can't develop more in the future.
Earlier this evening, we noticed a very rapid increase in its organization on satellite photos. Since then, it's still sort of trying to get a feel for whether it wants to intensify further right away or not, but at least for the moment, it's leveled out. But as you just pointed out, that doesn't mean it won't continue strengthening in the big picture.
All right. Thanks, Stu Ostro, Meteorology Supervisor. Stu and I will be back in a half an hour to give you the very latest on this dangerous hurricane. But if you can't be with us here on the Weather Channel, you can always check us out at our online service at weather.com. Let's go back to Sharon in the studio, and I believe she has a look at some of the rest of the nation's rather tranquil weather.
Right you are, Jeff. Not a whole lot happening across the rest of the lower 48 here, but we are going to find a few areas that might be troublesome as we go into the overnight. And we have seen a few more thunderstorms developing into portions of extreme eastern Kansas on into northwestern Missouri, and that may be one of the areas that we have some troublesome weather. There are some of the thunderstorms generally just to the south of St. Joseph, Missouri, and kind of riding in between St. Joseph and Kansas City. But again, some of these thunderstorms could produce some pretty gusty winds, and the likelihood too for maybe even a little bit of small hail. That's a possibility going through the overnight. Big cluster of storms here. These continue to head off to the east and may eventually even affect you in and around St. Louis. Most of what we find out here is ground clutter, but a couple of thunderstorms popping up about midway between Salina, Kansas, and heading down toward the Wichita area, so we'll keep an eye out for that. We'll take you on up into eastern Ohio and in around Pittsburgh. A little cluster of some showers, maybe a brief heavier shower, but that's about all you see.
Good morning and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Paul Emick. Hurricane George continues to gain strength tonight as it heads for the U.S. coastline. Rain bands associated with George are spreading across portions of South Florida and the Keys, and the squalls will be increasing in intensity throughout the overnight hours. For a complete update and current update on Hurricane George, we now turn to Jeff Morrow in the Forecast Center. Jeff.
Okay, and as we head on through the morning hours on Friday, sometime during probably the mid-morning, that is when the eye of Hurricane George will be passing right probably very near Key West, and that is when some of the worst conditions will be felt, particularly in the lower Keys, but all of South Florida will be getting some pretty nasty squally weather as we head through the early part of the day on your Friday. Let's go ahead and give you the very latest from the National Hurricane Center. This is the 1 a.m. advisory, and we'll be getting a new advisory at 3 a.m., so we're kind of in between here. 23.4 north, 80 west, centering the hurricane 135 miles southeast of Key West. The winds at 90, and the movement still that west-northwest track. And when you look at this track, it is just remarkable how straight it has been all the way across the Atlantic. We've been dealing with this system for well over a week now. Central pressure estimated to be about 988 millibars. Actually, we have a NOAA reconnaissance aircraft in there, and they've been giving us some information. Let's show you the watches and warnings that are out currently. Again, the red shading here, that is from Deerfield Beach south all the way through the Keys and then up the west coast to Longboat Key. Those are the hurricane warnings. Also the tropical storm warnings from north of Longboat Key up to Bayport on the west coast, and from north of Deerfield up to Stewart on the east coast. Those are the tropical storm warnings that are out at the present time. Let's show you what it looked like out on the Keys a little bit earlier in the day. This is Florida City, Florida. This is just south of Homestead, actually not in the Keys, but close. As you can see, rain bands associated with Hurricane George were beginning to assault various areas, and there were even some reports of some isolated tornadoes, and it looks like that threat may continue over the next 24 hours as these bands continue to move through the southern parts of Florida. But it is the Keys where we think some of the worst weather will continue to be. Joining me now here in the Forecast Center is Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. Stu, we've been watching this hurricane all evening and now into the early hours of Friday morning, and it looks like, again, the Keys are going to get the worst of it.
It does appear as if the eye is headed right for the lower Keys, going to pass very close to Key West, and it also looks like the conditions will deteriorate very rapidly a few hours from now.
All right, again, our satellite imagery, as it has done and will continue to do over the nighttime hours, we get a little bit of a break here, what we call an eclipse. But we're coming up to a time within the next hour or so where we'll be starting to get some new pictures here, and we expect to see this whole area probably jumping a little bit, maybe up in toward this region. But at this time, a lot of the deep convection was on the east side of the hurricane.
And that's been a feature of this hurricane for a couple of days now, maybe even going back about 3 days, and it persists. And thus, when the eye goes by Key West, whether it goes just north of it or just south of it or over it, we do expect that the strong squalls will persist for some time. So really, throughout the day on Friday, it's going to be a very stormy day there.
All right, and we have a radar we can show you. This is a close-up Doppler Here are the Keys. Miami is located here, and then Key West all the way out here. And Stu, very easy to pick out where the eye is. And on the eastern eye wall, if you will, looks like we're getting some oranges and yellows, some pretty intense convection there.
Undoubtedly, very intense squalls over here. And even though the eye looks like it is open a little bit on the west end, in general, it's still well organized, plugging along slowly but surely, and it looks like this more intense stuff will be getting there maybe around daybreak or shortly thereafter.
All right, what can folks in the Keys expect? Now, we talked a little bit earlier with someone from the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. She said that things hadn't been too bad yet. A few squalls moved through, but we expect things to get worse as we head through the morning hours, right?
Which is typical of hurricanes. They will have the outer squalls, which will cause the wind to rise and then subside a little. Next squall comes, it rises a little more, then subsides. And then as the center of the hurricane approaches, then things go downhill very rapidly. Looks like we're still a few hours away from that happening yet, but it will.
Now, the worst of it in the Keys, but how about up toward Dade and Broward counties and on over toward Collier County?
They may not feel the effects quite as badly as places down in the lower Keys, but anybody within the hurricane warning area should be assuming that there's the potential for hurricane conditions and not let their guard down.
All right, now we have another satellite radar composite, and we want to talk a little bit, Stu, here about the future of this hurricane. Now, again, we talked about the Keys, but it's almost a certainty, it appears at this point, that this hurricane is going to reemerge out here into the Gulf.
It will, and then it's just a question of exactly where it ends up. There still is that window of uncertainty, so anybody along the Gulf Coast in here should watch for the latest, and we do expect that as we get a little further down the line and the hurricane gets a little closer, hurricane watches and perhaps eventually warnings will be issued.
But for the first time in a long time, this circulation will be pretty much free of a lot of landed hindrance. Is there the potential for some further strengthening?
There is the potential for some further strengthening. How strong it gets, we're not sure yet. That'll depend on some of the other atmospheric factors a little bit down the line.
All right. Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro, thanks for being with us. You'll be with me again in a half an hour. We'll keep you updated throughout the overnight hours, folks. Keep it tuned here to the Weather Channel for the very latest. But if you can't be, you can always check us out online at weather.com for the very latest there. Right now, let's go back to Paul Emick in the studio. He has a quick look at the rest of the nation's weather and a sneak peek at your Friday forecast.
All right, Jeff, let's bring it on. In addition to Hurricane George, we have some interesting action across the portions of the plains now into bits of Missouri. A little area of low pressure, still some storminess here, and our warm front is on the rise. A warm rise it will be, too, bringing warm air northward and some rain, too. Along with this front, we have some showers ahead of it when it can gather a bit of moisture. That it's been doing in parts of Minnesota and the Pacific Northwest, a little bit damp. Now, we're not dealing with wet weather in parts of California, but a very persistent upper-level area of low pressure continues to keep clouds with us. That it will do. Anything you see shaded in an area that's orange indicates a risk of some strong storms and a risk of severe weather. Could be seen in parts of Missouri and in portions of Kansas, in addition to, of course, the severe potential in Florida. Around Kansas City has been rumbling pretty good as of late, even around St. Louis. A little bit on the damp side presently. This has been moving pretty fast. That will be the trend to continue. Even some showers around Cincy. Columbus a bit drier now, but around Pittsburgh now we've got our rain as well. North of here, Minneapolis, hang on, we can get some sprinkles in here shortly. Around Seattle and Portland, we've seen some sprinkles off and on throughout the evening, and that's going to be the case, too, for our Friday as well. Here's a big picture, a little bit wet in the northwest, a little bit stormy in the middle, and, of course, we know of all the problems here. We talked about precipitation. Now let's talk about, for the most part, where we didn't see precipitation. We saw lots and lots of heat, lots of sunshine able to make it through for Amarillo. We had 98 for a high for the day. On a Thursday, Galveston tied a record. A bit above average, too, in parts of the panhandle of Texas, also in New Mexico. A little bit cooler, though. Only about 72 for L.A. Around San Francisco, about 66. Around New York City, we hit 68 degrees for the high today, down to 63 presently. Even 59 towards Chicagoland, and a warm 79 at Miami. And Paul Emick at the Weather Channel. Time to look at active weather across the contiguous 48 and also talk tropics. That is our big story tonight. We'll begin Storm Watch with our tropical update. We have not one, not two, but three hurricanes to deal with. We've got Hurricane Jeanne, we've got Hurricane Ivan, we've got Tropical Storm Karl, and obviously the one closest to home, the biggest story tonight, is still Hurricane George. It's pretty active time here in the tropics, and September is often around September 10th, usually the climatological peak as far as the most over history has shown us the most active time in the tropics. So we're just kind of in that peak still, just kind of coming over the top of it there. All right, let's get close to home first. Been following a very persistent path all the way toward South Florida for a number of days. We've been watching this one. Current position, you can see denoted there, 125 miles southeast of Key West, Florida. Winds around 90 miles per hour. Those are sustained winds. Some stronger gusts out from this, though. Still moving west-northwest around 14 miles per hour. Now, as it's gone along throughout the Caribbean, we've talked about the incredible loss of life, including maybe potentially even as much as a couple hundred people have been killed as a result of Hurricane George already. A lot of heavy rain, a lot of flooding potential still. Now, as it moved across Cuba, when it moved ashore, as often is the case with tropical systems, as they move ashore, they start to lose a bit of that punch. They start to weaken a bit. Hurricane George, though, is starting to move back out over water. It has been doing so for a number of hours, starting to become a little better organized, and that potentially means worse things for us in South Florida, where this system is moving toward us. Here's a look at the big picture of Florida. You can see some of the outer rain bands kind of on the move across South Florida. Even though it may be raining pretty heavy off and on in parts of Key West and pretty windy here, haven't even seen the worst of it yet. Still, more rain and more winds on the move. Into South Florida tonight, it's been a little wet around Miami and Lauderdale. Even another vantage point here shows a cell there of a pretty sizable intensity, kind of northwest of the Pompano Beach area on Boynton Beach. That could be kind of wet here for some time. We'll talk more about George at the top of the hour with Weather Center, so please stay tuned for that. Okay, here we have Tropical Storm Karl. You can see it's 1,620 miles west-southwest of the Azores. Winds are around 60 miles per hour. It's moving southeast around 9 miles per hour. And do expect kind of the easterly and northeasterly motion to continue as it moves away. It actually is forecast it may strengthen a bit. Already not that far away from hurricane strength. Needs to pick up another 15 miles an hour about here, but it could potentially continue to strengthen a bit. Kind of expect the general motion to continue, again, more of a northeasterly, easterly track as time goes on. But again, it could strengthen and might potentially kind of hold on just a bit in kind of a strange interaction with Hurricane Jeanne. It might actually help to keep it kind of put for a while in the middle of the ocean. Here's Hurricane Ivan. You can follow its progress there. It's currently 775 miles west-southwest of the Azores. With sustained winds 80 miles per hour moving north around 12. And Hurricane Ivan has begun moving toward the north and looks like it should take more of a northeasterly than an easterly jaunt. A lot cooler water. The cooler water is around here. A lot cooler sea surface temperatures. That doesn't bode well for its continued life. In addition, also starting to increase with some northwesterly shear or some rip aloft that will help to kind of bring this to a demise. Hurricane Jeanne, another hurricane to look at here. 105 mile per hour sustained winds, 750 miles to the west of the Cape Verde region. And this one is on the move as well. Looks like the motion should continue. Not much change for the intensity for a while. A trough just a bit to the west of it, maybe actually helping to shear it just a bit. You can kind of see its position there. Some of the clouds being kind of blown back by some of the shear. And that is Hurricane Jeanne. We'll talk more about Hurricane George next in Weather Center.
Hi, I'm Dick Clark. And now everyone can enjoy the freedom of the new ISIS cellular phone from Philips thanks to prepaid cellular.
Introducing prepaid cellular from Worldwide Direct. With prepaid cellular phone cards, there's no monthly bills.
Take the phone just in case.
Thank you.
And no contract, no credit check, and no deposit. Got car trouble?
My car's broken down. Can you come and help?
Help is just a call away. So forget those outrageous phone bills. With prepaid cellular phone cards, buying airtime is easy. Order from home and the phone arrives at your door ready to use. Get the Philips ISIS prepaid cellular phone, a $199 value now.